Somebody was speaking. Okay, nobody is speaking. Right. So, okay. So let's start with object-oriented programming. So we already know for interview preparation, fundamentals of OOPS, CN, OS, DBMS, they are as much important as DSA, right? So in case we are not familiar with it, we'll be facing many challenges while sitting in the interviews, right? So that's the reason we'll be studying all of these. And I have a very different way of teaching because, as you can see, I have these topics here, topics all around. We already know that OOPS and CN do not have that much of material to learn from, right? So I'll be including many of the interview questions that are currently in the market trend, right? So for now, I was able to grasp and made a question set for OOPS, maybe more than 100 questions that are currently online present, because many of us who are sitting for the interviews, like you will be sitting, or you, some of you already might have sat for some interviews for your internships or anything. You guys, or we guys share our interview experiences, right? So we share the types of questions that are being asked in the interviews. So through those, we all get a type of question sets that are already present on the internet, that are present on maybe GitHub as well, in many places, right? So I have accumulated all of these question sets to create a bank, kind of question bank for for interview questions preparations, right? So we'll be doing those as well. There are some topics that are not important in terms of the curriculum, but they are important in terms of questions, right? You guys might have not studied a topic named as cohesion in OOPS, but there can be a question that can be asked, right? Because OOPS is one of the things that, if I do a CPP course or anything, we have the OOPS as part of that curriculum, right? So we'll be doing OOPS, we'll be doing all the concepts, not in accordance to the one that you are doing in your colleges, but in accordance for the interview preparation. So we will be not be going that much deep. We'll be covering all the topics and we'll be doing questions, right? So in case you want to give any type of advice, any type of topic you want to include, any type of topics you want to discuss, anything, any feedback, anything that you can suggest by which we can learn a little bit better. Obviously, we all are learning here, right? So you can have a better idea, you can have a better instance, anything, right? So please free to suggest, please be free to be vocal about it. I'm open to suggestions, I'm open to discussions, everything, right? So as long as we can have an interaction in the class and can make the session very interesting and interactive, we are up for it, right? So I am starting with all of this introduction because we'll be learning together for this subject also, and many subjects in the upcoming months, right? So we should have a good, you can say, bonding in order to understand that maybe how I can teach. Maybe out of the 95 people in the class, maybe 10 people are not able to understand, or maybe 5 people are not able to understand. So you have to inform me in advance so that I can include that. Maybe you guys have done C++, but do not have done that, like did not have done the Java programming language, due to which you are not able to understand an example that I am doing for Java, right? So you guys might have additional questions on it. So please be pretty much vocal about it, right? And let's start, right? So I have asked a question in this slide that how many of you have hands on any of the programming language that we have already discussed, and many of us have hands on at least one of the programming language, right? So uh, uh, from all of us, is there anybody who has not done Java? Because like C++ also has OOPS concept, Java has also OOPS concept, but many of the examples that you can find online, or maybe books, right? O'Reilly book for Java comprehensive learning, I think that is a very thick book that is totally on Java, right? So I'll try to include the examples in both the languages, but I'll be leaning more towards Java. In case you want the example from any other programming language, we can write it in the session itself, right? So, do we have, from the total strength of people that are present in the session, do we have any person who is like totally out of context for the case of Java programming language? Like you haven't heard of Java and you haven't studied even a program for Java. Okay, okay. We have a good strength of people here. Okay. So we have approximately half of the people who haven't learned Java, right? It's okay. I'll be including the examples in CPP as well. Preferably, I'll be doing that in Java. I'll be giving you basics also in Java, like along the way. Done, done. I'm lowering the hands for everybody. Right? It is the discussion is done, right? As you can see that many of the programs that I have written, the code snippets, they are from Java only, right? So actually, once you learn a type of programming language, it is very easy for you to grasp any other programming language. Uh, for example, I have already learned C++, right? In maybe college, right? And when I started working, I was asked to learn about C sharp, right? And once I started learning C sharp, I was like, this is so easy. This is similar to the one programming language that I've already done, right? But there can be some languages like Rust that are a little bit difficult to grasp. But fortunately, Java is not like Rust. Java is very easy to understand. So I'll be assisting you with the Java intrinsic basics also, right? For example, here I'm importing java.io.star. So this java.io is the package, and star means that I'm importing all the classes of java.io. IO is input output, right? All of the classes from java.io, right? So I'll be giving a brief of all of the programs that I've included in these examples. Sorry, in these examples. And in case we have a good strength of people who haven't learned Java, so no need to worry about. I'll be assisting you guys every way I can, right? I prefer to go with Java because many of the examples or everything you can find online will be in Java only, right? So I can go for CPP also. I'll write a CPP program as well side by side. But yes, we'll be going with Java. So I am repeating myself. I will be assisting you with all of the examples that we are doing for Java. You can do the same with CPP because many of the concepts are similar. Like for these oops is like, it is obviously language independent. It is a concept that can be applied to many of the languages, right? So that's the reason we can do it in many languages. I'll try to include CPP examples for all of the examples that we are doing, right? So no need to take tension, and please point it out in case I forget that I have to give a CPP program as well for the same, right? So no need to worry about. Cool. So let's start with the basics, the programming paradigms, right? So this is a concept that many of us who have already studied OOPS in our college curriculum have not heard of, because this was one of the concept that I studied once I was I was preparing for the interviews, right? That's the reason I've included this as well, because many of the concept in OOPS have examples, but many are theoretical. So it is half conceptual, half theoretical, right? So you will be finding theory as well, and we need to learn it, because I will not. How will you guys learn that? How, what is abstraction without learning theory? If you want to learn what is abstraction, you have to write an example for abstraction. You have to learn what is like abstraction actually, right? So in case you're not able to understand anything or so, please let me know in between, right? So programming paradigm. Firstly, what is a paradigm? Paradigm is a way to solve a problem or to do a task, right? Okay, just a second. Paradigm is a way to solve a problem or to do a task, right? So what is a programming paradigm? I now got to know that paradigm is a way to solve a problem. So what is programming paradigm? It is an approach to solve a problem using some programming language. So I have a problem in place. For example, it can be any problem related to maybe Q, right? So I'm talking about a problem related to Q. So programming paradigm is a way to solve this particular problem related to Q using a programming language, right? So basically, programming languages follow some strategy when they are implemented, and this methodology or strategy is paradigm. So, what is the actual hierarchy, or in case I get a problem, right? So, firstly, the problem statement is defined. Okay, in case you're not able to understand my handwriting, please let me know. I'll write a little bit better, right? So I get the problem statement, analysis of the problem statement is done. You think or decide on a programming language through which you want to resolve the issue. So choose a programming language. Okay, I think before choosing a programming language, I can also go for a way. What way that I'm talking about? So it is writing the pseudocode. So I cannot, if I do not want to decide the programming language first, I can go for writing a pseudocode. So if resolving an issue, I can go for a pseudocode. Then I can choose a programming language and then implement the solution in the chosen programming language. So this is a way, this is a methodology, this is a strategy to resolve a problem using a programming language, which is nothing but a programming paradigm. Cool? Anybody? Okay. I'll ask a question in negation. So do we have anybody who is not able to understand this concept? Okay. So we are able to understand it, right? Cool. So these are the different types of programming paradigms, right? Okay, just a second. Yes. So these are the different types of programming paradigms. They can be um, enlisted into two different types. The first one is imperative programming paradigm, and the second is declarative programming paradigm, right? As you can see, I have included only the examples here, because the most important thing for me in order in asking in an interview about a question like this will be examples, for sure. I might ask you a difference or maybe what it means, but most probably I'll be asking you an example if in case it comes. There is a possibility that this might not be asked, But if asked, an example is the one which has the highest probability, right? So, okay, what do we mean by imperative? Okay, imperative. We speak like we pronounce it as imperative, but actually, I have. Okay, let's leave it at that because I speak it as imperative in another language, so that's why I'm using imperative here. So please do not mind me, right? So what do you actually mean by imperative in English?
Something important.
Okay,
It means something sort of order or suggestion or request that would come under.
okay, okay. And declarative, it is by meaning only. Declarative, I'm declaring something, right? I'm declaring it first, right? So the actual difference between imperative and declarative is that in case of an imperative, I am only concerned about the result, the actual result that I'm receiving. Whereas, yeah. So, in case of imperative, I'm talking about the result rather than the way to get to that result. But in case of declarative programming, the way, the logic, the style that is being performed in order to get the declarative programming paradigm is more important. So, in case of imperative, the more stress, the more emphasis is given on the result. Whereas in case of declarative, more emphasis is given on the way to achieve the result, right? So, any, okay, I have a person who is asking doubt. Yes, yes. Mm, anybody is interested to ask a doubt? Okay. Okay. So are you guys able to understand the actual difference between imperative and declarative? Okay. Cool. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, cool. Okay. So imperative is done by step, right? Some assignment will be done or something, but imperative cannot resolve complex problems. More emphasis is done to resolve or implement very simple problems, and it includes loops and variables and everything, right? So I'm giving you like the pointers, right? Only the pointers. I'm not going that much deep into it. We should know what is imperative programming paradigm. I should not do a PhD on it, right? I am not asked to answer this what is imperative programming paradigm with examples for a 5 mark question. So we are not writing a written exam. We are being interviewed. It is somewhat similar to what we have in Viva, right? So in case of Viva, my answers should be quick and crisp so that the interviewer or your teachers, your mentors are able to grasp this knowledge that this person sitting in front of me is able to understand the concepts and is pretty much clear about it. right? So yes, cool. So let's start with imperative programming paradigm. We have this imperative programming paradigm as part of the first types of you can say way to resolve the issues, right? So it might be very old, right? So that's the reason they are very used for resolving very simple problems, right? So procedural programming is one of the most you can say old technique, and at that time the best you can say feature that can be given by this procedural programming is reusability of code, right? So the emphasis will be on reusability of code, right? And there is pretty much no difference between imperative and procedural programming. That's the reason it is sub part of it, right? So we have C, CPP, Java, and Pascal as examples of this. I have a link where there is defined who is the actual founder or developer of these programming languages, but I don't think that is of any use to all of us, right? Nobody will ask you in an interview that who is the developer of C. The very, very extremely rare case, 0.0001% case, right? So the second one in case of object-oriented programming, in imperative programming paradigm is object-oriented programming. Now, in case of object-oriented programming, the program is written as part of classes and object. So the whole program will be written in the format of a class and an object that are meant for carrying or storing the data and for communication. So my smallest atomic entity in case of object-oriented programming is object only. We'll be doing more about it because the whole subject will be dedicated to it, right? And what can be advantage in case of object-oriented programming? Many of us might have done object-oriented programming as part of our curriculum. Best advantage of object-oriented programming is data security through abstraction. Okay, what have I written? Through abstraction and data encapsulation, right? We can have inheritance as well. I'm not writing it. I should write it. Inheritance. If an object needs to inherit the features of its parent object, they can do so by using the concept of inheritance. What else? I can have code reusability for sure because I'll have methods, I'll have classes, I'll have inheritance as well. In that scenario is also a best example for code reusability, right? And yep, that are pretty much I want to cover here. No more, right? So programming languages like Java, C++, Python, and Visual Basic .NET. That is, we have two types of .NET. I think first one is VB and second one is MVC. That is for C Sharp, right? So C Sharp and VB are the two different types of .NETs. So these are the ones that actually uses the approach of object-oriented programming, right? I am doing this on a brief basis for now. We'll be diving more into that once we are starting with the actual things, right? Okay, cool. The third one is parallel processing. So, for example, I have a problem. I have resolved that problem by writing a program in any X programming language, any programming language. I pass it through compiler and processor. Let me use a processor to execute the program, the issue, the resolution of the issue in, for example, 20 milliseconds. Now, in case of parallel processing, what am I doing? What am I doing? I am keeping that same program, and rather than it getting executed via a processor, I am sending it to multiple processors at the same small units of these programs. So this will be disintegrated into smaller units that will be sent to these multiple processors in order to resolve this solution parallelly. What do I mean by parallelly? For example, this program, the above program, is being sent. So small units of these are being sequentially sent to the process of parallel processing. These small units will be sent to multiple processors. So the one that can be done in executed in 20 milliseconds can now be executed in 4 milliseconds. So this actually enhances your I can also write performance because it is being done very fastly, right? And the major impact will be for sure on the execution time, right? So the approach that is being followed here, I can easily write the approach here, which is divide and conquer. So I'm dividing the whole problem, a big problem, in smaller chunks of issues, problems, and sending it to multiple processors for it to get resolved, right? So less time, better performance for sure, right? So do we have any doubts in understanding imperative, procedural, object-oriented, and parallel processing? Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Cool, cool. Great. Now, in case of declarative, let's move on to another color so we can easily differentiate between these two, right? So in case of declarative programming, my emphasis will be on logic, functionalities, and database. So more emphasis will be on logic of computation, the way that I'm able to resolve the problem, the way that I am simplifying by writing many of the different programs, right? So mm, just a second, I think I have said something different in case of the first one. Mm, just a second, I need to confirm something. I don't want to give you some wrong information. Okay, the thing that I am suspecting is that if I'm talking about imperative step by step, I think it emphasizes more on the way rather than the result. I think I have interchanged it. So that's the reason I am confirming it so that I do not give you wrong information. Okay, the program. Hmm. So yes, I suspected it right. So this is the case of how, and this is the case of what. So how the result is achieved and what the result is. So that's the reason I was searching it in like many places in on the internet so that I can at least give you the right information, right? So in case of imperative programming paradigm, the stress is given on the steps that are being followed, the control flow, because through loops and your if statements, we are controlling the flow. And rather in declarative programming, we are more using the expressions, the rules, rather than going for the control flow, right? So really sorry for this breach because I was thinking of the same thing again and again while teaching that this might be the issue that I am talking about, right? So really sorry for this mismatch, right? So let's start with the logic programming, right? That's the reason, as you can see in the other like you can say subtopics under imperative, the more is going towards the type of code, like the way that I'm writing the code, right? That's the reason this is a little bit suspicious for me, right? So yes. Yep. So the logic programming, right? More emphasis towards logical problems. Logical problems may include puzzles, may include series, may include an already defined knowledge base also, right? That's the reason logic programming is more emphasized for the concepts of artificial intelligence and ML, right? So example, I can include perception model, but I do not want to include. So I can easily write here that it has more emphasis on logic. I'm talking about knowledge base here. So I can give knowledge base that is provided to the machine in order to train it, right? For reducing the sorry for deducing the result, right? So I can write AIML here, right? The second one is functional programming. So in case of functional programming, firstly, it is more about mathematical problems, right? So roots in mathematics. It can also use concepts of oops. I can use obviously, but it emphasizes more on the functionalities. You can say more on the mathematical functions, right? So in the case here, I can easily write that it hide the implementation through the concept of abstraction, right? In case you're not able to understand what abstraction is, right, or what inheritance was, abstraction and inheritance and polymorphism, and what was the fourth one? Anybody wants to contribute? The fourth pillar of OOPS. There are four.
Encapsulation.
Perfect.
Encapsulation.
So it is encapsulation. So these are the four pillars of object-oriented programming. We'll be doing that, so no need to be worried about, right? So I'm just writing it as a concept here for you to understand. So you once you get back to it, you'll be able to grasp it for once and all, right? And the third one is for database processing approach. If I'm talking about database, best example that I can give is SQL, right? Here, in case of database, I can put in easily management of information by storing and processing data. Nothing more. I do not need anything more here. If I'm dealing with data and I am storing it somewhere, it comes under database processing approach, right? So any doubts in understanding about imperative, declarative, and their subtopics? Okay. So I write a simple point here that by processing, I can mean filtration, I can mean aggregation, I can mean any of the things, right? I can go for join, right? Anything. So that's why I have written it. So we are clear with programming paradigms, right? So let's move on to the fundamentals of object-oriented programming. And the best two things that are present for object-oriented programming is a class and an object. What is a class? What is an object? We'll be doing that, right? Firstly, before moving forward, we'll be looking at examples also in maybe Java, right? So in case of Java, all my programs all my lines of code should be part of a single class, right? Not a single class, but should be part of at least any class, right? So in case of Java, all of my lines of code should at least be part of any of the class. It is not the case with C++ because in C++ I can write code as it is and execute it. It can include structure, it can include class, but there is no type of compulsion. But in case of Java, every single line of code should be part of a class, should be in class. I can have methods, I can have anything, right? Right. So that's the reason I am emphasizing again in case of Java. All of my lines of code you will find will be present in a class, right? Scope of a class. So what actually are class and objects? So classes and objects are two main aspects of object-oriented programming. Languages that use objects in programming. So these object-oriented programming are like the languages that use the object oriented programming will be having data in the format of objects, right? They can be any type of objects. They can be a data transfer object, they can be any user defined object, right? Any of the things, right? The smallest and basic entity is object. So the atomic entity is an object rather than any primitive class, right? So in case of primitive class, I'm talking about integer, float, like these primitive classes. They are part of object, but the smallest unit will be object. An object can have X number of integers, can have X number of float values, can have X number of strings. But the basic entity for object-oriented programming is considered as an object, right? So object means a real world entity. For example, I have an object rectangle which has its length and its breadth, right? So this is my class which has two attributes. Attributes in easy words I can talk about is features. So length has two features which are sorry, not length, rectangle. Rectangle has two features which are length and breadth. So for example, I am creating maybe an image. Best example. My guys might have done many of the questions in logical reasoning where we have multiple rectangles and you are being asked how many rectangles are there, right? So for example, I have four rectangles. I have four rectangle objects now. So first one, R1, will be having length 5. The unit is centimeter, that is predefined, and 3 centimeter as its breadth. The second rectangle will be having 3 centimeter and 2 centimeter as its length and breadth respectively. Now here, this rectangle object is the atomic unit, right? It is the real world entity, and the class is the, you can say, template from which the object is being derived. Class defines that rectangle. In every rectangle, there are two attributes, which are length and breadth, so that all the objects that are created from any of this class will have these two objects, right? So template means that, for example, can I have a real world example? Just a second, let me think about it. Okay. Mm, a very childish example that I can think of. We guys are having a party, and for every plate, there has to be four items, maybe a cookie, maybe a cake, maybe a chocolate, and maybe a drink, right? So, for the refreshment object, this is the class refreshment, and I have these four objects X, Y, Z, and A, right? So every of the plates, every of the individuals that are attending this party will have this refreshment object with these four, you can say, attributes. So these four attributes are fixed for an object, right? So this was the most childish example that I can think of, but I think you got the point, right? So any entity that has state and behavior is known as an object. So before starting with last 3 points, are we able to understand whatever we are talking about here? Like any doubts in understanding? Okay, let me rephrase my question. I need some responses from you guys. So, are we clear with whatever we have done till now? Great. So, in case you are finding anything sleepy or boring, please let me know. I'll make it a little bit more interesting, as much interesting that I can. Right. Okay, great. So let's start with the actual things that a class is like the class is having a part. Okay, just a second. I am searching for a. Just a second. Cool. So I was searching for a term that I have written, right? So any entity that has state and behavior is known as an object. So by I need a space to write. Where can I write? I'll write here, right? So we are already aware of the fact that class is the template. Objects are derived from classes, which means that objects are the instances of classes. So these are the terms that you will be listening to again and again in our sessions, right? So please take note of these terms, right? Instances of class means that I have a class, I can have X number of instances of it, and they are pretty much independent of each other. For example, for rectangle class, I can have 20 rectangles with their own lengths and breadths that do not have any relation to each other rectangles, right? So I have instances of classes. I have examples of these classes, right? So objects are real world examples of these classes. right? You got my point, right? So they can have both state and behavior. By state, what do I mean? Okay, guys, have you heard of these terms? Data members and member functions. Cool. So we have few people who have heard. Okay, I think I should have asked you guys about this question the first thing before starting. Really sorry for asking it now, but like from all of us who have already studied object-oriented programming in your curriculums already, like who are already aware of these terms, please raise your hand so that I can go for the strength. Like you will guys also not feel bored if I speak it in a way that I'm doing it from the scratch, and those who are doing it from the scratch will also not feel that it is a fast-paced class, right? So from all of us who have already studied OOPS, please raise your hand. I have studied, so I am raising my hand. Okay. Okay. 3 peeps. Raise your hand, guys, so that I can get a strength count from for how to move forward, right? Really sorry to bug you in between the class. Okay. Anybody left to raise hand? Okay, so we are pretty much a very less strength who are okay, or who are done with, who are doing, like already done these concepts. Okay, like 10, 11 people only. Okay, I'm lowering the hand. Who, anybody who wants to raise their hands, like who are already done with OOPS, are done with curriculum of OOPS in their colleges? Okay, okay. So we have, cool. I have taken a strength approximately max to max 15 people are already done with it. Okay. So guys, it is kind of revision for you. If you are aware of these and you think I should include any of the topics, please suggest it. And for those who are pretty much blank to these concepts, no need to tension. We'll handle it accordingly. Right. So cool. For state, I have the data members, and for behavior, I have the member functions. For data members, they are nothing but variables that are part of a class. And member functions are nothing but methods that are part of the class, right? So a class, let me define a class for you guys. I was talking about rectangle. So I have a rectangle class with 2 integers that are length and breadth. It's been a long time that I have written pseudocodes by like writing and not on system, right? And I can also have so these are nothing but data members. Now I can have methods which actually calculate the area. For example, length into breadth. And I have another method which actually calculates the perimeter, which is right. So here, these two, area method and perimeter method, are the member functions that are part of this class, right? So the state in a class or an object is maintained by data members, and the behavior are part of implementations which are done by member functions, right? So any entity that has state, I have state, sorry, object has state as format of data members and behavior as format of member functions, right? So they are known as objects, right? Bind together the data and the functions that operate on them. So this particular sentence actually depict the concept of encapsulation. Encapsulation is nothing but uh, encapsulating or binding together the data members and the member functions together to form an object is termed as encapsulation. So I have data as well as method as part of this class, right? So the amalgamation or the binding is also comes under object-oriented programming. Then the last sentence, the collection of object is called class. So as we already know, object is a real world entity, whereas class is a logical entity. These objects of these collections of objects are nothing but class, right? Class defines that how an object should be defined. An object is the actual definition of the class, actual implementation of the class, instance of the class. You can use any of these terms, right? So any doubts in understanding the actual concept of OOPS, guys? Okay, we do not have any people who are not able to understand, I think, right? We have a good, intelligent batch of people. Cool. So before moving forward, I am asking these petty questions again and again because we'll be studying together for upcoming months. So I need to know your style of understanding and learning because I cannot have an individual in introduction with more than you can say 95 people virtually, right? I'll not be able to remember your name for sure, right? Because we have 98 people, I'm not able to see your face. I cannot understand through your expressions. I cannot learn your names and not know you in person, right? That's the reason I am talking about the whole class now, right? So what do you guys think? Is the pace okay? Is the pace slow or is the pace fast? Okay. Anybody who is thinking that the pace is fast, please raise your hands. Okay. I'm giving 10 seconds more. Any person who is feeling the pace is fast, raise your hand. Okay. Anybody who is feeling that the pace is very slow and it is becoming boring, please raise your hand. I'll not take any tension. Okay. We have two people. Cool. Okay. Are these the same people who are already who have already done OOPS? Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. So I'll try to have a faster pace, right? Okay. One more question with all of these people. Okay, we have approximately 8 people. Please, I am lowering their hands, right? So out of these 8 or 9 people, um, have all of you, is there anybody who is unaware of OOPS and feeling the same? Because many of us are doing OOPS from the scratch. That's the reason you might feel that it is a little bit slow paced. So anybody from the 8 people who are doing OOPS from the scratch and still think so, then I'll for sure faster the pace. Okay, 2 people. Cool. Cool. So I'll faster the pace so that it will be more understanding for all of us. Right. Cool. And cool. I'm lowering the hand. And for all the remaining 90 people, is the pace okay? Okay. Okay. So for those 8, 9, 10 people, I'll try to faster the pace, but we have a little bit like we have little bit more strength towards those who are thinking the pace is okay. But please do not like take tension or anything. I'll faster the pace so that you find it a little bit more interesting, right? As far as we can also discuss better ways to learn, right? So please suggest in order in like you think that by understanding or by talking about these things we can make it more interesting. I'll be happy to accommodate as well, right? So we have, for those 10 people, we have remaining 20 minutes. So I'll faster the pace a little bit. And for all of us who are already part of this session, please let me know in case you think that it is still understandable for those 90 people. And for those 8 people, please monitor or maybe assess that how can we go a little bit faster and not impact the other people as well. So I'll be teaching a little bit fast, not that much, but a little bit, so that everybody is able to grasp and not find it boring, right? So we have mostly we talk about 4 pillar of OOPS, but here I'm pointing out at 6 pillars of OOPS because without object and without class, OOPS is nothing, right? That's the reason they are also pointed out as pillars of objects, right? Object-oriented programming. So object and class, we already know what these two are. I can write the terms for object. I can write instance of class. And for class, I can write the term template, right? These keywords just writing. For abstraction, abstraction means I'm hiding the inner details through any of the way. Maybe I am putting it as a private access modifier. I'll be doing what an access modifier is. Just you need to know that I'm restricting the access of the data members so that I can hide the internal details. Just you need to know this, right? So for example, if I have a rectangle class with length and breadth, right? The one that is using, for example, I hide that length and breadth. So for the outside view, I'm only aware that this is my rectangle, right? I am not aware of its attributes, right? It is a black box for me, how many attributes it has, right? So this is abstraction in layman terms, right? Encapsulation, binding the data members and member functions in a single unit. Already discussed about this first, right? Inheritance, the parent, the child object is inheriting the features of the parent object. How it inherits the features, what are the types of inheritance, we'll be doing that later, right? And then comes the concept of polymorphism. So I have a single variable, not variable, single method, which takes different forms. For example, I have an area method which can calculate the area of a circle. It can also calculate the area of a rectangle. It can also calculate the area of a square, right? But they are 3 different units. They are 3 different methods also. They can be different, they can be same, right? But they are different, totally different from each other, right? So a single method is taking different forms in order to assist better, you can say, what I can use the term code reusability, right? Same name performing different functions, right? So these are the 6 pillars of OOPS. Are we able to understand all the 6 pillars? Any you can say black box for us for any of the concepts? Just talking about layman terms, not talking about going deep into it, just layman terms. Okay. So we can move forward, right? Cool. So the advantages of OOPS. So these are the advantages of OOPS. How can I say that? Okay, my question is, modularity for easier troubleshooting is an advantage of OOPS. My question is how? Because we are now aware of what OOPS is, what are the pillars of OOPS, we are like done with basics. What do you think that like this term can be an advantage of OOPS?
Everything in a separate object.
Perfect. Huh? The presence of objects, obviously. So I have all the methods that perform a particular function. Everything is modular, everything is defined, every function is segregated. That's the reason troubleshooting becomes far much easier, right? That's the reason it is considered as an advantage of OOPS. Reusability of code through inheritance, I think that is pretty much clear to all of us. I can also write polymorphism also. And we will be having examples to prove this point that reusability of code happens in case of inheritance and polymorphism. So that to assess the reusability of code you can say advantage, right? Then flexibility through polymorphism. Polymorphism, I just said polymorphism means that same name, different forms. My area method can calculate the area of 3 different types of objects, which means that my area method has flexibility to accommodate 3 different shapes, for example, in this scenario, right? That means that it has a flexibility. My method, I can, you can say, reform my method to make it more flexible to accommodate more functionalities, right? Then the fourth advantage of OOPS is effective problem solving. How do you think effective problem solving is an advantage of OOPS? You might have noticed that I am asking you the advantages, you can say description only when it is not direct, because flexibility through polymorphism is pretty much direct for me. But effective problem solving, wow, how do you think it is an advantage of OOPS?
Ma'am, as the problem is solved part by part in different classes.
Okay, so somewhat you are saying that a single class is assigned a single problem, you can say. I can have multiple classes that combine together to resolve a problem, somewhat. Okay,
Breaking down complex problems into simpler, like objects in objects form,
okay,
like they
cool.
are manageable.
Okay. So this is somewhat similar to troubleshooting, that I have a breaking of a problem into simpler problem, and I have a particular class assigned to it, so that at the end of the day, if I face some problem, I can have a better, easier troubleshooting as well. So somewhat interrelated. Okay, I got a point. Anybody who wants to add something? Okay. So all of the pillars of OOPS actually enhances the problem solving. Modularity, we just discussed this modularity method. Like, so for this modularity, obviously, as already, I'm sorry if I am taking your name wrong, Vasanti has already pointed out that modularity, I am breaking my problem into simpler problems using objects and classes for it, right? Encapsulation, by encapsulation, I can easily say by encapsulation and abstraction, I'm hiding unnecessary details for enhancing the data security. It is also considered here also, right? Reusability of code also enhances problem solving, right? Because redundancy has reduced pretty much, right? And scalability is also covered here. By scalability, what do I mean? For now, for example, I am designing. Okay. Anybody wants to say something? Okay. So I'm resolving a problem for maybe 100 users. Now, the same problem another problem might be faced by thousand for 1,000 users if I scale my application, right? So there, my application should work the same no matter I'm having 100 users, 1,000 users, 10,000 users. But there can be a threshold, obviously. The threshold will be there, but scalability matters, right? So we should have less and less rewrites, less and less problems in case I am scaling the my application, right? So that also comes under effective solving, and it can be counted as an advantage of OOPS, right? So are we okay to move forward? We clear with all of these 5 points? Great. So we are going more deeper into class and object. As you can see, I have also giving you a syntax for declaring a class in Java as well, right? So for those who are not aware of basic concepts, even basic concepts of Java, no need to worry, right? So I'll be assisting you throughout the way. I'll be giving you as much help as you need, right? So in case of a class and in case of an object. So a class is a blueprint or a template for creating object. Object will have everything that a class will have. But I'm talking about only data members because the member functions are shared by everybody. Not talking about static members for now. We'll be talking about static members later, right? So each of the instance of a class will be having their own sets of data members, right? And an object is an instance of a class. I have already used these terms 4 or 5 times, right? Then it specifies the attributes and methods that the objects will have. Similar in the way objects will also have this. So it is a concrete entity created based on the blueprint provided by the class, right? So I am emphasizing my point again and again so that we get the crux of the matter, that what a class and an object is, right? A multiple objects can be created from the same class, each with its own unique data. Already pointed it out that unique data means they have their own sets of data members, right? And classes are used to model real world entities. Classes are used to create objects, simple terms, and define their properties and behaviors. So in easy terms, these are all the points that we have already covered, giving you a quick recap of all the class and concepts, right? So anything that you are not able to understand from here, guys? Okay. So are we clear? Great. Great. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. So, okay. So now my question still goes to those 8 people who thought that we can increase the speed, we can make it a little bit faster in pace. So from the last 15 minutes, you guys might be noticing that we are doing it at a little bit faster pace. The concepts that are already covered were covered a little bit faster. I have included these things again and again because reading the same thing, having a quick recap again and again will help you to understand and remember the concept at a better speed, right? So that's the reason you might feel that this point is emphasized again and again. It is repeated again. That is deliberate, okay? So for those 8, 10, 12 people, is the pace okay, or should we move a little bit faster? And for all, okay, the first question is for those 10, 12 people. Is the pace okay now, or should I go a little bit more faster? Okay, I should rephrase the question for, yep. Okay, so pace is okay. Pace is okay. Cool. Cool. I'll be trying to accommodate everybody, right? And for all those 90 people who thought the pace was okay, is the pace still okay? A thumbs up will be required from your end. In case you feel it is not okay, okay. I have a person who okay, we do not have a person. Okay. Okay. If you feel the pace is very fast, raise your hand. This is the first time that I am having near to 100 people part of a class. So that's the reason I'll take a little bit more time to accommodate everybody, but I'll try to take care of everybody's of your understanding so that at the end of the day, nobody goes home without understanding anything, right? So we'll be starting with the class declaration in Java and this concept and everything in my next class, right? So, okay, I have not copied the PPTs like for now, but I'll give you, I'll share my screen tomorrow, maybe whenever our next class is. I'll share my screen and will show you the types of questions that I have included, right, in my question set, so that at least we guys know that what more interesting thing is coming ahead. Might be the concept is boring, understanding the concept is boring, but the conceptual questions, the question answer, Q&A, everything will be very interesting, right? So wait a second, guys. I'm sending you a feedback form. Please do not forget to fill it before leaving. Just a second. So did you guys already had a session with any of the other mentors? Or is this the first session of your batch? Okay, the first session. That's cool. Hopefully, I gave you a good impression, and you will be excited for all the next sessions that are coming for you guys. So I have sent the feedback form and the session ID. So session ID will be a field that is being that will be asked in the form. So please do not forget to fill this form before leaving. And hope you guys learned something or the other. We'll be very happy in case you want to give feedback or anything. Sending you my email ID as well. Yeah. So this is my email ID. You can email me anything you want to discuss. You can stay back in the classroom. You can ask in the classroom. I'm comfortable with anything. And you can interact with me on LinkedIn as well. You will find me on LinkedIn easily because fortunately, I have a unique name, right? So really happy to meet you guys. And hopefully you learned something new today. Maybe not something new, but something interesting, right? So we'll be interacting more. Please do not forget to fill this form before leaving and have a very great weekend. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for today's session. Still repeating myself, please do not forget to fill in this feedback form before leaving. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, guys.